You know those moments when you're doing what you love in your business? Maybe it's standing on stage or creating content. Whatever it is, you're totally immersed and time just seems to slip by. This is called the flow state.
At Speaker Flow, we're obsessed with how to get you there more often. Each week, we're joined by a new expert where we share stories, strategies, and systems to help craft a business you love. Welcome to Technically Speaking.
And we are live. Daron, welcome to the show, man. This has been a long time in the making. Super pumped about this one.
Glad to be on, long-time listener, first-time guest. So really appreciate all the value that you add to I know just the knowledge community, but also the speakers in particular. So glad to be on.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Thanks for the compliments, man. Yep, we're happy to have you here. We just missed you in 3D in San Antonio, but this is as close as we can get, I guess.
Yes,
sure.
that was actually my first NSA conference to attend, and
Yeah.
I live in Austin, which is hour and 15-minute drive from San Antonio. So it's good to get down, rub some shoulders with other people who are in the struggle, and then get back to Austin, Texas.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Yep. It was a good event for sure. So you come in on Saturday then, the big day?
Yeah, my kids had some events on that Friday, so I got up that morning, and I'll tell you what, that was, from the first keynote down to, the end of the day, it was really great content. Gave me a lot of good ideas. I'm always looking I'll do 40 to 50 keynotes a year, but I'm always kind of scouting talent and looking to copy paste, not particular content, but styles and techniques. And so it was good for me to get there and get around some people who are doing it, at a high level.
Yeah, kind of get that meta layer as you're watching the presenters outside of the content. So you get to learn about the style on top of whatever the content is too.
Yeah.
Must be nerve-wracking to be on that stage, though, speaking in front of a bunch of professional speakers, because they know that they're getting analyzed from that meta level most of the time. So respect to anybody who jumps on that stage.
Yeah, because we're all doing it, right? And so
right.
I'm sure they were nervous, but you couldn't tell. I mean, all of them were obviously, kind of seasoned pros and crushed it on stage.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. Well, this is going to be a super fun episode. Really excited to get your experience and your background. You're running an incredible business, so super excited to unpack that. But we like to do our research a little bit ahead of the show, of course, get to know you a little bit more, some of the stuff you've been doing, and based on what we could tell, you wrote a children's book on empathy, I believe, right? That ended up on Oprah's favorite things list at some point in time. How did that happen? How did that all unfold? Why a children's book? Cue us in some context there.
Yeah, so my first book was a book called Call Audible, which started with my third year at Harvard Law School and then sort of walked people through the pivots that I took to become an NFL coach. And so I wrote that in 2016. It was in labor of love. It was one of those things where I'm sure people, listening and watching can identify with having that eternal Google Doc with all sorts of drafts and ideas. And I finally sat down and said, look, 6 days a week, 3 hours a day, same coffee shop, same computer. I'm just going to sit down and type. So I got through that one in 16. It was really sort of thinking through what the next one would be. And then A Kids Co., which is a company out of Portland, does a great job. They've got a kids book about racism, a kids book about blockchain, just a lot of these topics that are, I think, topics that parents are unsure of how to really spark with their young people. Background, my wife and I have 5 kids from ages 5 to 12. So we're constantly looking for good content and kind of methods. So the owners reached out and said, hey, we saw that I'd hosted Brene Brown on the campus of the University of Texas. And they said, hey, see you teach empathy in your courses. Would you like to write a book? And knocked it out in a week. And so it was great. Oprah's list is always great for sales, at least for the next 3 to 4 quarters. And it was a good experience.
Wow, so cool. It
journey.
Seems like such like an elite thing to have happened,
Yeah, it was
not everybody gets on Oprah's favorite things list.
Yeah, and it was completely, this is not some like, oh, I didn't know. Like, it was literally the owner of the publishing company said, hey, it's like 11:30 at night. He said, I need to talk to you right now. So I'm going through all sorts of things. Like, we're getting sued for some reason. My
Yeah,
whole legal
right.
background's kicking, like, what the hell's going on? He said, dude, the book's on Oprah's favorite things list. I was like, wait, what? He said, yeah. I said, wait, what is that? And he said, she has this favorite things list every year. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, all right. So I went back to bed. I got up and told my wife. She goes, oh my gosh, do you know what that means? I'm like, I guess she has a list and the book's on it. She's like,
Yeah.
no, this is like a big deal. She's like, I buy half of my Christmas presents off of that damn list. So it was in
Oh, wow. Yeah, man,
So
It's crazy how natural
that's
it
awesome.
happens sometimes, you know?
Yep.
That's how the magic, it's just opportunity and
yeah,
timing coming
Yep.
together. It's beautiful.
yeah,
So
yeah. So it
true.
was good.
Well, so you touched on this a little bit here, but
Yeah.
one of the things that touched us was that you have lived in three very different environments in your professional career, from like attorney, law, to NFL coach, to professional speaker. And like I can see how professional speaker can evolve in a lot of different directions. So, but like the flop between law and NFL coach blew my mind. And just the fact that you've even evolved past that point. So can you just like break down your journey a little bit for the people that aren't so familiar with
Yeah.
you, myself included?
It also blew my parents' mind, to be honest with you, Austin. So this is how it went down. I was in law school. Look, my goal was to be governor of Texas. Going into law school, a little backdrop. I had applied to Harvard Law School when I graduated from undergrad in 2001 and was waitlisted. I was waitlisted 4 years and then finally got in. And so at that time, I thought I want to be governor of Texas. I'm going to practice law, make my way back to the home state. And that was the track until the summer before graduation. A high school buddy of mine, who was a high school coach, said, hey, let's go to, he had to work the South Carolina football camp, Steve Spurrier camp. Asked me to go with him. I go. They ended up needing a volunteer to coach like 60 kids, one of these groups. And I was like, I'll do it. Best 3 days of my life. The
Wow.
first time I did not have to set my alarm clock to get up. And, one of the things I talk about in a lot of my keynotes is, notice what lights you up. So this was one of those experiences where I had no dreams of becoming a coach before being in that environment. And my MO is like, if the spirit moves me in a direction, I'm going. Like, I don't want to wait until retirement. Time is a finite resource. So I went back to law school, called my parents. I said, look, I'm going to graduate, but I'm going to write a letter to every team in the NFL, and I want to coach football. And to my parents' credit, they were surprised but supportive. They say, hey, your name is on the loans, right? So like, you gotta,
It's
you
like,
gotta
do
be
what you
more
want.
so, good luck. Wrote a letter to 32 teams. 31 said no. I got the rejection letters from Belichick and Wade Phillips, and Herm Edwards said yes, and he was the head coach, Kansas City Chiefs. Said, look, you can come in as a training camp intern. I'm not making any promises to you. I went there in '07, right after graduation. I begged him to let me on, let me stay on for the season as a volunteer. And then he hired me full time in '08. So that led to 7 years of coaching. And that was not in the journal from high school, right? So and look, it makes me think too, guys, like, 2023 right now, I have some great friends who've been laid off from some really great brands and positions. So I do think that, and I think about AI, like the confluence of all these forces, we have to become very comfortable with reinvention as thought leaders and as knowledge creators. And so whether you're speaking or writing or creating digital products, like the more you can kind of hone skill sets that are adjacent to your core work, I just think the better off you'll be in the long term.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
what a good
that's so
takeaway.
true.
So
Yep.
I just gotta like unpack this just a little bit. So like, I mean, you did the kids camp for coaching. So do you have a background in football previously? Like, did you play in college? Did you play like in high school?
Yeah,
And
high school
or like, was
warrior,
it
right?
fairly
Like
light?
I was a
Yeah.
fighting Mount Pleasant tiger. I was one of those like 5'10" and a half, 161.3 pounds. Like, I weighed myself every morning. Um, I'm eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and protein shakes trying to get my weight
It's a
up.
good life.
And it was one of those things where I never had any illusions that I was going to play past high school,
Wow.
but I love the sport so much. I mean, Friday Night Lights, East Texas, small town of 12,291 people. You grow up with these guys, and we were good. Went to the semifinals and the quarterfinals back-to-back years. And I ended up being like an all-district strong safety, not because of my athletic talent, but just because I had to know every play and like make sure I could put myself in the best position to play. And so that was sort of um, it was lingering there in the background, and the
Yeah.
camp just forced it to kind of come into the forefront.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the reason why I asked that question is because I had a feeling that was the case, but I just got to note the tenacity. Like you just went out there and got after it. Like you wrote 32 letters to NFL teams, like having teach to kids camp. Like and it's not like you coached college football and did it forever and now you're moving up. Like you just went, dude. It is an awesome story. The
I mean,
tenacity to go off and do that is beautiful.
no, I appreciate it, Taylor. And I think one thing that I found, I taught at the University of Texas for 8 years. And I actually taught a class on rejection. And the research that we found shows that once you get past the fourth rejection in a certain category, your body gets accustomed to the blow, right? The first rejection's like life shattering. It's all
Right.
over. Once you get to number 4, your body says, okay, I thought I was going to die, but I'm still alive. And so it was a really good experience for me because the first rejection letter I got was Bill Belichick from the Patriots.
Mm.
And I remember sitting in my apartment thinking, what am I doing? It was one of those form letters, I was like, oh gosh. And I said, okay, I've got 31 to go. And they started rolling in Dungy. I've got Dungy's letter still. But I got the call from Herm. And I think that's what's important. And even kind of thinking about speaking, you need one yes, right? Like it sounds like a cliche and cheesy, but the right opportunity in front of the right crowd can catapult your entire business model. And I think a lot of people kind of sit and wait for opportunities, but in this business, I found that that's what you need if you want to go from mid 5 digits to 6, mid 6s, 7s. Like that's the sort of tenacity you need in order to scale that ladder.
Yeah,
Heck yeah.
it's so true. There's something really to be said about just taking action too. That in and of itself is a differentiator, right? Because there's a lot of people that'll think about doing it, but there are vastly fewer that will actually go and take action. And so just by willingness to give it a shot, like I think you're already positioning yourself to have good things happen just because
I
most people
talk
won't,
about it.
you know?
I talk about it. It's one of
Yeah.
Amazon's, I can't remember what number they have of like one of like their core principles, but one is massive action. And I love that phrase. It is like you essentially want to bombard the market with like your ask. And there is, look, I tell it's hard if people really sit and examine all of their experiences when they put themselves out there. It's very rare that you go over, right? Like if you do it enough, somebody's going to say, this Taylor guy, I don't know, this is weird, but let's just give this kid a shot, right? Let's just give this guy a shot.
Oh, I
And
remember the day.
you
So
remember that? So yeah, that's just the way I approach life.
yeah,
Dude,
heck yeah.
amen. You inspire me. So
Appreciate-
fill us in, like, what does your business look like today?
Yeah. So first speaking gig, I finished coaching in 13 with the Browns. I get to Austin. I get an invitation from a local nonprofit. Hey, can you do a leadership talk? I'm like, yeah, sure. I do the talk. At the end, they give me an envelope and I take it home and it's like a $50 Starbucks gift card. And I give it to my wife. She's like, oh, this is great. She says, people get paid to speak. I said, what? She's like, yeah, it's like a whole industry. So my approach always when I meet something like this is to go into a cave for 2 weeks, get as many long form articles, YouTube videos, podcast episodes, the best books. And I literally went into the speaking industry for 2 weeks. And I remember walking up from the basement and saying, what the hell? I had no clue just how wide this market was. And that was the day I decided, okay, I'm going to make this a business. Started my LLC the next week, DKR Strategies. And I just said, look, sort of like with football, I just want to get as many reps on stage as possible. So I call it the animal circuit, right? The Elks and the Lions and every other, all those clubs. I'm like, I just want reps. And I got a really good piece of advice early from an older speaker who was at an event. He said, look, man, get as much content, get as many photos and videos as you possibly can. And I did that. And it got to a point to where I had a full-time job as a professor at UT, the University of Texas. I was running a center for sports leadership. And I told my wife in 2019, like, I think one thing that I find from speakers is that we're not very vigilant when it comes to our own metrics. So for me, I've got an Excel sheet with tabs for every year, and I have 37 different columns for each engagement, right? Industry, title, day of the week, quarter, price point, beginning price, negotiated price. Like, I really want to know everything I can so that each quarter I do a quarter by quarter analysis of sort of where I am. I told my wife, I said, look, if I can meet or beat my salary in 2 consecutive years, then I'm leaving. I'm doing this full time. She's like, great. 2020 hits. And when March hits, I said, okay, this is it. Like, let's just write this year off. But as you guys know, the inverse happened in which now I'm doing 3 to 4 digital keynotes. There's no check baggage and there are no Ubers. And I said, wow. So I left my full-time jobs in 2022. And I've been all in this industry for a decade now. So that's sort of my arc. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Massive
mind-blowing.
action.
What a crazy story, man.
Yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah. Yep.
For sure.
Okay. So like, how much of your business is composed of speaking specifically versus other revenue streams? Like, do you have courses? Do you do consulting? Is there coaching? I'm just trying to get a sense of like what the makeup is of this 7-figure business.
Yeah, no. So first thing I want to say, I want to give you guys a shout out. I love your annual industry report. I think that it's the most in-depth sort of analysis of where people are in the industry and kind of what that pie looks like. So for me, 70% of my revenue is purely from talks. And I'm 40 to 50. And as I keep lowering that total number of targets of talks per year, but those are going to be to corporate clients or associations. And that's 70% of the bucket. The other 30%, it's interesting. About a couple of years ago, I heard a guy talk about the bundle, right? You're never pitching talks. I think this is if people out there who are listening to this, if you don't remember anything else that I said, you're not pitching keynotes. You should be pitching bundles. You should be pitching the keynote. You should be pitching the leadership dinner with select leaders the night before. You should be pitching a 6-month drip sequence that you trickle out to their members, kind of validating and reinforcing content that you produce. Like, it should be, we look at the speech as the end of the engagement. For me, it is the wedge to get into the organization. And so that the rest of that 30% looks like, I'll tell you this, everyone will say, hey, if you're coaching, if you're speaking, you should coach. I don't like one-on-one coaching. And I found that out after 2 years of it. And I said, I don't care what the price point is. I'm not doing one-on-one coaching. I'll do group coaching. So the rest of that pie is primarily group coaching with organizations that I've spoken to. Because for me, writing is really my first love. And so speaking really helps me to buy the minutes that I can use to write. So that's that 70-30 split. There's a small 5% sliver of like book sales, but that's the way the economic pie looks like for me.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Awesome breakdown. And
it
great
should
point
be
about the bundles.
Good makeup, yeah, and the bundling thing is genius. It makes it so much easier too, because now you're not talking about one specific thing. Because it's a bundle, you have so much more leverage in the negotiation, and it's really like it becomes a thing of like, what do you value it yourself, and not a this is what this person charges for it, because you're not comparing
It's
apples
not a
to apples
commodity
anymore. It's a
anymore.
Yeah, and
differentiator.
one thing we talk about
Yeah.
in Monetize Your Message, a fellow speaker, Will Baggett, does incredible work in this space. And he and I launched Monetize Your Message 4 months ago. And as we're working with some of our clients, we're like, listen, you take your keynote, and then one exercise we work with them through is what would it look like for this to be a 6 week, 5 minute per week video drip of you reinforcing the keynote, and just start there. What does it look like for it to be? Maybe it's purely email based, right? Maybe it's a 6 week drip via email of content tailored for your client. And when they've been able to present the budget, the bundle to the organization, I'll say, even for me, rarely will the organization take all 5 pieces of the bundle, but they may take 3 of 5, 2 of 5. That final negotiated number is always higher than the individual keynote would have been. And you'll find that the marginal cost of effort for the other elements of the bundle is not as high as you would think, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, especially when it's systemized, you can just rinse and repeat over and over again, like, yeah, you might tweak your keynote a bit. You might tweak the 6-week thing a little bit. But if you do the video thing, I mean, chances are you can, at least as a starting point, make that broad enough to work with any client who buys it on top of it. And then, if you feel like customizing them along the way, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, once it's just a rinse and repeat process, it's cake to deliver. It's
you're
no
speaking my
extra work
language,
for the
Taylor.
extra value,
You're speaking my
So
language, man. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
hell
it's
yeah.
funny too
Okay.
because I think a lot of people are already using some of those elements, like
Right.
going in the day before to meet with the executives for a dinner. Like a lot of people do that anyways. So like list that as a line item. Like use that as a leverage point while negotiating. Don't just ignore that and then do it afterwards. I mean, you can as extra value. Never wrong with going extra value, but if you want to increase your fee, like point out the things that you already do to make the customer experience amazing.
And let me, to that point, Austin, what I'm finding, especially in a post 2020 climate, because I look at the speaking industry, it is like, BCAD. It's
Yeah. Was
before
defining.
2020 and after. And I think that's going to be the dividing line for a long time. Any opportunity to get you in front of key members of their team that they want to keep, there is so much value in the marketplace. Like, think of this less as an event. This is a retention experience. And that's the way I sell it. I say, look, I know you have 6 to 7 folks who at any day you could get the email saying they're headed to the other company, right? Let me sit down. Let's just have a jeans, and we'll do it in a very laid back environment. We'll get some wings. I just want to be able to really support them as leaders. And every time I've pitched it, companies have said, yes, we've got 5 folks. I'll send them the invitation now. So that's the sort of, I think that's the 7-digit speaker mentality, which is I'm not here to share wisdom and jump back on the plane to Austin. I'm here to coach people through a difficult time. And I don't see this ending in the near future. So I'm here to coach key members through a difficult time and add value beyond the stage.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It's the thing, man. We've touched on this just briefly as we've been talking, but it goes from you being a commodity, something, a brand on a shelf next to other brands, to being truly stand out. Like, you can't compare this to anything else because it doesn't exist. Like, it's not just a keynote fee and they're benchmarking a keynote 5, 10, 50. It's like, no, you're getting a whole experience, and it's the way to stand out
Yeah.
from the crowd. Yeah, for sure.
Scott Adams, the Gilbert cartoonist, he talks about the talent stack. And,
Mhm.
we think about
Yes.
our core work, right, as speaking, and we say, okay, well, there's not much that separates me from every other leadership speaker out there. But if you think about all of the parts, I think about a hamburger, right? So you got the buns and you got some lettuce and tomatoes and jalapenos if you're me. Like every aspect of your value add creates this level of uniqueness that then can't be compared, right? So if I'm adding these elements to the bundle and incorporating my life story, I wake up every day 100% confident that no one can copy paste that.
Yep.
And I think that eliminates a lot of the chase that I see from speakers. And I've been in this boat like 2013, 2014, 2015. I was trying to copy paste everything that I saw. And I said, wait, let me really go back to my narrative, incorporate myself into the content such that forever it's going to be a unique value proposition.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You know, something that's like tangentially connected to that too is that really when we're talking about a bundle, I think it's easier to point out that we're not even selling like a thing, we're selling a solution to a problem, right? Because we build the bundle around the things necessary to help the person solve the problem. And that's ultimately why somebody's hiring you as a speaker. It's not because, well, maybe it's because you're the best person they've ever seen on stage, but for the vast majority of the market, it's because you're an expert in something and you can solve a problem for somebody and somebody needs that problem solved and they'll pay for it. And if you have a bundle, now we're addressing all of the various ways that we can help them attack the problem. And that gives them confidence in it being a solution, which makes it easier for you to make the sale. I mean, it goes even beyond
Referability, the
increasing fees.
spin, the
Yeah,
repeat business, like
I was
it's such a good
eavesdropping
strategy.
on, one of the things that we do is Will and I, my co-founder, we will sit in on negotiations between speakers and event planners. And I see this time and time again in which on the discovery call, the speaker immediately wants to ask questions like how many people in the audience, how long is the talk, who's going to
the
be speaking.
logistics.
And I said, look, in the first 5 minutes, if you're not asking about pain points or problems, you're not doing your job. Like there should be many more questions around like what are the pain points of the organization, and you're taking copious notes around those pain points, and in the back of your mind drawing connections between your content and those pain points. And I think that it's easy to sort of have this copy paste method, but every experience that I've had as a speaker, it really should be a separate speaker, like a separate experience, right?
Mhm.
And you'll see some recurring themes pop up, but the event planner should feel like they're getting a curated experience from working with you. That's what it should feel like.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it
this is
all starts with
consultative
that first
sales.
conversation.
Yes.
Consultative sales, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
coming in as an expert, and there's no better way to build trust. Because again, at the end of the day, you're not pitching a thing; like you're pitching a solution to the problems. And when you can relate back, you draw connections to how your content fits into the world. That builds an incredible amount of relatability with them, and then they're going to quickly realize, "Wow, I've never had a conversation with any of the people that we've lined up for this talk like this one. So why wouldn't I go with Daron to solve my problem?" Like, because no one is thinking this way as it relates to the entire experience, and the experience doesn't start after they buy. It starts before they buy, and you're consultative in that nature before they're obviously willing to put money on the table because now you've
Mm.
solved all of their problems.
And
So,
really, if and I may be jumping the gun here, but really, if you're looking at this the right way, like I see this as a marriage. Like I see this as I just did my 440th keynote,
wow.
and I know that when I sign the contract, I'm sending annual thank you gifts to event planners from 2015. Like December, my virtual assistant knows. Like there's this period right after Thanksgiving where we are taking a large mailing list and we're sending physical thank you gifts to everyone who has hired me during the course of my career, right? And so I know when I sign the line, like they may not understand it then, but I'm wedded to them. And what happens is that people obviously will move. So I'm sending tokens of gratitude to folks who've been in 3 more organizations since, but now they want to bring me into the current company from this 6-year relationship. And then look, Paul Graham, the Y Combinator founder, has a great article that I always recommend speakers to read, which is it's online, his blog, Do Things That Don't Scale. So he talks about for startups early on, you need to be in the freaking weeds. Like you need to be living the pain points on a day-to-day basis, because once you're able to then zoom out, you have such a good macro level view of how the systems fit, but you got to stay in the weeds for a pretty good chunk of time to get it before you can build the systems. And speakers kind of want to like copy paste and then move on to the next guest. Like, no, you need to get in here and figure out where the pain points are in your model. Then you can create the solution, buy the solution, partner with um, with folks on a team in order to alleviate those problems and then scale up.